say is at a crucial stage. It's not because of foreign wars we wage. It's more to do with the colors blue and red. Too many laws and too much government. Can you tell me where the Constitution went? The Bill of Rights is just hanging by a thread. So many people trying to cross the border. Politicians build a new world order. Too many minds are convinced they should be led. I've gotta be free the way God made men. And I won't be ruled by the damn UN. Taking your right to self-defense. They say you're safer but they don't make sense. Dangerous ones will not turn into guns. All the unions always ask for more. All we buy is made on foreign shores. Come a day when there'll be real hell to pay. I've gotta be free the way God made men. And I won't be ruled by the damn UN. Damn UN.
Hello and welcome to today's broadcast of Tap Into the Truth. With you as always, I'm your ever so humble host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are and whatever you may be doing, with all of the usual caveats, of course. All right, so there's a lot going on, and a lot continues going on. It's almost like the world's gone crazy. I think it's just spring fever, y'all. I really do. But tell you what, we're doing another bonus broadcast here, one that will be easily available on SoundCloud, one will be uploaded quickly over at iHeartRadio, one that you will find everywhere you can find the show very shortly. This one will be there. Trying to get this information out. But before we get into all that, would like to remind everybody about the show we just had this past Wednesday. Wednesday night I was joined by Karen Stroghan, who of course is well known for her YouTube channel Girl Writes What. She is a men's rights activist, and we had an interesting conversation. Then I was also joined by Gabrielle Boucher, who is the one of the founders and currently the president of the Millennial Project, and we talked about younger voters that seem to be souring on the Democrats. Also, looking ahead to Sunday, we will be broadcasting on Mother's Day. I'll be joined by Doug Giles. Yes, that's right, the purveyor of Clash Daily. Will be joining us to talk about his new book, Rules for Radical Christians. And then after that, I will be joined by Dr. Lee Bolcom, who will be discussing his book, The Immutable Laws of Living. So it should be interesting coming up. Also, while I'm at it, let me make the point that I am still scheduled to be joining Kel Fritzy on her show, Infidels Are Watching, upcoming on the 22nd. So check that out. Listen in live if you can. Join us there. And let's get into it. You know, again, usually I like to hold off till we get a little later into things before I jump into the story that the title of the show is based on. But this one, I think I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in. Naturally, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It is a quote. It's a quote that obviously you'll recognize. He's dying anyway. So what happened there? Well, supposedly a White House staffer made that statement. Is it true? Yes, obviously it's true. Apologies have been offered. But here's the thing. Let's set a backdrop. Let's set a picture, shall we? And then we'll take this as over. Because obviously the White House aide reportedly said this in regards to John McCain because of his views on the CIA nominee that Trump has selected. Statement, he's dying anyway. Well, CNN reported this. It was posted as White House official. Yet another leaker, and an administration full of them, reported that the White House aide Kelly Sadler had joked about Senator John McCain and his failure to support President Trump's CIA nominee, Gina Haspel. Now, Haspel, actually, we can talk about a little more later, but supposedly this outcasting was basically, he's dying anyway, Sadler said. And then later she called McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, to apologize. Now, the White House responded saying, quote, "We respect Senator McCain's service to our nation, and he and his family are in our prayers during this difficult time." Senator Lindsey Graham ripped Sadler, saying, quote, "Miss Sadler, may I remind you that John McCain has a lot of friends in the United States Senate on both sides of the aisle. Nobody is laughing in the Senate." Now, I think that really kind of shows you where Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's right there with John McCain. He's a guy that's got an R at the end of his name, but when push comes to shove, big government always seems to be the answer. When push comes to shove, progressivism seems to be the policy that should win the day, according to Mr. Graham and according to John McCain. I can understand why partisan politicians would feel concerned. You can say a lot about Trump's nominee for the new head of the CIA. She'd be the first woman to hold that position. Democrats and John McCain have made statements that they simply can't support her because of her involvement with the programs that involved waterboarding. Never mind the fact that past heads of the CIA, most recently, have been there during that time frame and had signed off on them too. Waterboarding took place while Barack Hussein Akbar Obama happened to be sitting in the White House. Waterboarding isn't something new. Now, it's slowly being rewritten that somehow this is one of the ultimate forms of torture, when in fact it's something that is used in training of our military personnel. Try to help them to be able to further resist this kind of activity. There is a difference between actual torture and these enhanced interrogation techniques. Yeah, I know. Pretty words that usually mean they're hiding something. Well, what they're hiding is the fact that this skirts right up to the edge of being torture, but it doesn't actually fit the true definition of torture. But this really isn't about any of that either. It's all political centrifuge. When it comes down to it, John McCain got his feelings hurt by Donald Trump when Donald Trump was running. John McCain, who's friends with Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump hurt Lindsey Graham's feelings when they were running in the campaign to become president. So John McCain's upset that he hurt his friend's feelings. And since then, John McCain has stood up, made his way to the floor of the chamber in dramatic fashion to once again screw over the American people when it came to a vote about Obamacare. He's done this. He's recently made comments in regards of how he regretted choosing Sarah, everyone's favorite Alaskan. Regretted choosing the person that actually got conservatives to the ballot box on his behalf, because most conservatives really weren't particularly excited about John McCain. because he had already been kind of wishy-washy. He had already earned the title, the Maverick. He had already been the kind of person that when it came to push to shove, you understood he was going to come down on the side of the progressive, not the side of the Republican Party, if there was a battle between the two. So there are a lot of people that see through where John McCain's at and what John McCain is doing. This is about trying desperately to put a thumb in the eye of Donald Trump, no matter who gets hurt in the process, before he shuffles off the mortal coil. For some folks, they find that unforgivable. For some folks, it's still all about partisan politics. For some people, we can't seem to let any of that go. But see, here's the other thing. That's a very human response. We tend to forget that. John McCain is still a human being, and John McCain has family that's going to survive him, that are also human, that are entitled to have their feelings as well. Making no excuses for John McCain, it's still not particularly humorous that someone would say, doesn't matter, he's dying anyway. It's cold. It's cruel. Now, some people, that's the sense of humor. If this was a leftist making this comment and it was about Donald Trump, well, they'd be all about it. It's like, hey, yeah, all right, that's hilarious, woo! So the media's upset about this. The Senate is upset about it. But at the end of the day, the rest of us, we seem to be falling into those partisan areas, too. I've heard people talking about this topic all day. I saw how Good Morning America jumped all over this first thing this morning. None of that is relevant to the situation. You can legitimately say that John McCain has earned every bit of harshness and venom that he gets from folks that actually are conservative. Because he has earned it. I'm not happy with John McCain. I haven't been happy with John McCain for a very long time. He's not my senator. So I've had no role to play in trying to change his role in the Senate. But can we try to step away from the politics for just a little bit? Can we stop being so partisan? And can we show some respect, if not to John McCain himself, at least to his family who is going through this too? They're sitting back and they're watching a man who to them is important, who to them presumably they love. I don't know his family personally. I can't say. From the outside looking in, I would say it certainly looks like that's the case. It's what you would expect. Family usually withstands politics and differences in opinions and all the other like. Can we respect them long enough to step aside and move away from partisan politics? Can we see what John McCain is doing for what it is and leave that to be what it is? We know what it is. John McCain is still desperate to try and hurt Donald Trump one more time because he hurt his feelings. Does it matter at this point? Now, you can make the case, and I would make the case, that John McCain should have resigned from the Senate. They should have let the governor of Arizona select his replacement to fill out his term until the next election or until a special election or whatever else would have been most appropriate. He should be spending as much time as he can at home with his family. But he's not going to do that because he still seems to think that somehow this makes him a hero. that he's still serving to the very end. You've done your time. You've done your service. Go be with your family. But here's the other side. If he's not going to do it, then he's not going to do it. Maybe he'll change his mind and do it soon. I think he's determined to try and stay there and cause as much trouble for Trump as he can, and that is political and it is petty. But I think we, the rest of us, and I'm talking to conservatives, those of us who are angry and have been angry at him for a while, we need to take a step back to recognize that this is a man who is dying and who knows he's dying. He knows his time is coming, and he knows it's coming quickly. That's got to be scary. And it's got to be disappointing. I mean, I don't know how I would react if I was told tomorrow that I had a tumor in my brain and there was not really much of anything they could do about it. It was going to run its course, and at some point down the road, despite having the best medical attention available, that it is going to eventually, sooner rather than later, bring an end to my life. What I would hope for John McCain at this point is that he would step away, not because I think that the United States of America would be made better by having a stronger, more conservative-minded senator put in his place, although I do think that to be the truth. But I would like to see him step aside because he needs to move to a point where he can himself let go of this partisan politics. Stop letting what Donald Trump has said to you in the past hurt you. Stop letting the whole political game, the whole political circus that we see go on in Washington, D.C., stop letting it control you. It's eating you up more than the cancer ever will. John, go home. But if he's not going to do that, if he's not going to listen, then the rest of us, we need to let it go. This isn't a time for partisan politics when it comes to this man. Now, I've heard a lot of people say to the contrary, because he can still do a lot of damage, and yes, he can. But if he is going, knowing that his time is short, knowing he has so few days left, if he's going to cling to that anger, and if he wants to die a bitter, angry man who still has Trump living in his brain rent-free right there beside the cancer, if he's going to let Trump have that much power over him to still hurt him over a few statements, a few words, then that should be looked upon with sadness. I feel bad for him. I'm still angry at the things he's done, but I feel bad for him. I was raised to believe that you really shouldn't speak ill of the dead. Knowing that his time is so limited, this almost feels like that. It doesn't feel right to say a bunch of negative things about John McCain at this point in time. So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the topic of John McCain, I'm going to practice the philosophy that Flower's mom, no, it wasn't Flower, it was Thumper, I'm sorry, Thumper's mom from the Bambi movie so eloquently said, and that is, if you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all. So, from this point moving forward, unless I see some reason to say something nice, I'm not counting on that. I'm not holding my breath. I don't expect it. But unless it happens, I'm not going to mention John McCain again. This segment will be the last time. Unless it is to mention something involving his actual passing. I would imagine I might make an exception for that. I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to be angry. I've not forgiven the times that John McCain has I don't pretend that whatever actions he took when he served this country in the military, free pass for those occasions. But I'm not going to be angry at him anymore. And I'm not going to say a bunch of negative things. And I hope that as many of you that are actually listening will take up a similar philosophy. Because, again, I know most of the people that listen to this show are rather conservative. And a lot of you have been very angry with John McCain for a long time, just like I have. But let's move past the petty partisan politics, at least for this occasion. I think we can do that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask you to join me in doing that. So that's it. All right, the next bit that is worth mentioning and talking about and getting out there. Excuse me. It would appear the more we dig into this, the more we discover, the more we find, seems like Obama's FBI spied on Donald Trump way more than anybody previously imagined, at least according to a brand new report. This past Thursday, an analysis from the Wall Street Journal's Kimberly Strassel on the latest developments in the Justice Department's decision to allow House Intelligence Committee members to view classified information about, quote, a top secret intelligence source in the FBI's investigation into the Trump campaign, has revealed that the FBI may have spied on the campaign a lot more than what was previously believed. Strassel began by highlighting remarks House Speaker Paul Ryan made in a press conference on Thursday about the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes's demand to see more information about the FBI's top secret source. Quote, I think this request is wholly appropriate and is completely within the scope of the investigation that has been ongoing for a while with respect to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And Ryan went on to say that I actually think this is something that should have been answered a while ago. Now, Strassel noted that this suggests that the Department of Justice knew full well it should have turned this matter over to congressional investigators last year, but instead deliberately concealed it. It's no longer the Justice Department. It's become the cover-their-own-backsides department. The most important part of Strassel's analysis, though, was where she dissected a recent report from the Washington Post about the FBI's top secret source. In fact, she wrote, I think I'm hunting rabbits. She wrote the following. The Bureau already has some explaining to do. Thanks to the Washington Post's unnamed law enforcement leakers, we know Mr. Nunes's request deals with a top-secret intelligence source of the FBI and CIA who is a U.S. citizen and who was involved in the Russia collusion probe. When government agencies refer to sources, they mean people who appear to be average citizens but use their profession or contacts to spy for the agency. Ergo, we might take this to mean that the FBI secretly had a person on the payroll who used his or her non-FBI credentials to interact in some capacity with the Trump campaign. This would amount to spying, and it is hugely disconcerting. It would also be a major escalation from the electronic surveillance that we already knew about, which was, by all accounts, bad enough. Now, Strassel also notes that the timeline of events is critical because the FBI has insisted that a tip in July of 2016 from a Clinton-connected Australian diplomat on Trump's campaign volunteer George Papadopoulos, well, according to them, that's what led to this counterintelligence investigation into Trump's campaign in the first place. This little tip about this low-level guy who did something stupid was eventually what led to the creation of the Steele dossier. No, the Steele dossier was created separately. But the Steele dossier was used to get the wiretapping warrants, wasn't it? Now, Stossel continues by noting the different stonewalling tactics that the Justice Department has used in order to try and prevent information from coming out, strongly suggesting that whatever is in these files is going to prove, well, it's going to prove rather uncomfortable, to put it mildly, to the FBI. Stossel's analysis falls in line with comments that were made this past week by CNN's law enforcement analyst and retired FBI supervisory special agent James Galliano. Galliano tweeted, "Sources with knowledge of impending DOJ Inspector General report confirm that it will be a fairly damning indictment of FBI's 7th floor during the Comey era. It's worse than expected. Seems to be the consistent theme." Well, this tells you, this is out there by CNN. There's no question, there's no doubt. They were doing these things so that they could try to bring down Trump if somehow he accidentally managed to get elected. And see, the worst part is they still don't get it. They don't understand how Donald Trump won. They don't understand how Donald Trump's foreign policy seems to be working so well. They don't get any of it. And they still think that it's the rest of America, the ones that don't agree with them, that are the ones that are dumb. Of course, they actually think everybody other than themselves and maybe their small little circle of people they hang with, the one or two people they admire, they think everybody other than that is dumb. So you can be agreeing with them politically, and they still think you're dumb because, well, they're using you. They're using you for votes. They're using you as foot soldiers on the streets for their marches and rallies. They're using you to make it look like to the rest of America that they are the minority, that they are the ones that are few of number. Again, the left loves to use the concept of shouting people down. Why? Because the louder a few people are, the more people it seems like there is in the group. They also have a hard time estimating folks. But as this continues to fall out, as we continue to see more and more into the depths of how the FBI was being run under James Comey, we find more and more occasions of the deep state being in full operation. We see more and more evidence that there was a concerted effort, once again, to target a United States citizen who was running for the highest office in the land, but as far as they could really tell, had committed no crimes. Now, Donald Trump is not a perfect man, and he's done a lot of things, especially morally questionable. But when it comes to how he has led, when it comes to how he has handled his time in the White House, other than being a bit unpresidential, and he's far from the first person in the office who's been unpresidential, but aside from that, he's done a very good job being president. Now, there are still a couple of issues I have with Donald as far as things he's done, went along with. A couple of omnibus packages come to mind in particular. But at the end of the day, he's governed as a conservative. He's done the the right things for the economy, and he manages to project strength and power, which brings people to the table. That's why the foreign policy is working. Now, the left, they can't figure it out. How does this work? We always thought that the best thing to do is stand around the campfire and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and then everybody's going to love us. No, they're not going to love you. They're going to think you're weak. They're going to think you're a pushover, and they're going to let you believe whatever you want to believe, and they're going to take full advantage of it the whole time. That's the number one reason to get out of the Iran deal. But we'll talk a little more about that later. Did want to talk a little about another culture war story. This one was getting some traction today. And yeah, I've got some mixed feelings on it, and you guys can comment as you'd like. But evidently, there was this lady, a so-called sexuality expert, who happens to be an author as well. And she's become the subject of, well, I guess you can say very well-deserved, well-earned mockery. This has come up because she suggested that parents and guardians ask for their baby's consent before changing a diaper. Now, her name is Deanna Carson, and she was appearing on an Australian Broadcasting Corporation news segment about changing the consent culture. And when she was asked how young some of the children she works with are, she said, quote, "We work with children from 3 years old, and we work with parents from birth." Now, that raised some eyebrows and brought some questions, and she was asked, of course, from birth? Now, this is when Miss Carson turned up the insanity dial at somewhere about 100. And she said, yeah, just about how to set up a culture of consent in their homes. So, I'm going to change your nappy now. Is that okay? That's the question that the parent's supposed to ask the child. She just suggested that you ask your baby from the day they're born if you can change their diaper. Now, apparently this sexuality expert is not really a expert in human behavior. You would think sexuality would fall in. I don't know. Maybe she's a sexuality expert with other species. I don't know. But you see, a newborn can't respond. But don't worry about that, because Carson has that covered. She explained it, saying, quote, "Of course, the baby isn't going to respond. Yes, Mom, that's awesome. I'd love to have my nappy changed." But then she explained, but you leave a space, and you wait for body language and wait to make eye contact when you're letting that child know that their response matters. Now, this is fun. She's getting probably more negativity thrown her way than she should. I mean, not a lot more. Some of the stuff I've seen in the response has been a little over the top. This is someone that we should be laughing at. We should. Because that's a ridiculous statement. And it's the kind of statement that this sexuality expert obviously has been studying some, well, questionable social science reports and probably lacks the actual experience of having parented themselves. Now, I probably could look that up, but I'm willing to put money down that most likely that is the case. And if that is the case, no real surprise. But on the other hand, the fact that the idea that she's trying to establish this idea that consent, it's not a totally misguided concept. It's just terribly, terribly misguided in the attempt at how you're trying to establish this. You cannot, and we should not, be sexualizing or attempting to sexualize, even partially, a parental act of cleaning a diaper, changing a diaper, cleaning a bum. There's nothing sexual about this, and there should not be. The idea should never. There should be zero association with consent when it comes to child rearing. And the reason that there should be is because the child should be too young to understand or know anything at all about it, and because the adults that are involved in the equation should be mature, responsible, and hopefully not someone in need of psychiatric counseling. Hopefully someone that would not actually be a pedophile. If that's the case, they're not going to wait for consent anyway. So this is completely useless. It's a bunch of poppycock. And it's the kind of steeping pile of nonsense that causes us to need to change a diaper in the first place. But hey, like I said, the intention is good. Sort of. Not really. But anyway, that's that, and we'll move on. There were some things in the culture wars that have happened this past week that really kind of have my blood boiling. So I'm going to move away from this sexuality expert that actually is kind of a funny story, and we'll dive into some things that are a little more serious, if you will indulge me in so much. We talk a lot about the Logan Act here recently. We've talked a lot about how when conservatives show up and try to protest policies of a Barack Hussein, Allahu Akbar Obama, how somehow that makes us racist. It makes us bigots. We're just terrible people. We are the deplorables because we question a policy. Now, we don't question skin color. We don't question. We're just. But you see, that's where we are. We're guilty. We're using code. It's coded language. How dare you question a program that's designed to keep minority students from going straight from high school to prison? I got to tell you, I would be behind a program that protects students of any kind from a life that puts them on the path to prison. If it actually is a program that teaches them self-worth, that teaches them respect of others, that teaches them they can be positive, that they can be useful members of society, a program like that would be awesome. But the program that got put in place is a program where sheriffs were paid to look the other way. That emboldens rebellious young people. It makes them think they're better at being a criminal than they are. That kind of policy is useless. That kind of policy is dangerous. That kind of policy is exactly what led to a young man by the name of Cruz in Parkland, Florida, to go on a shooting rampage in a high school. But if I have the nerve to question that, that makes me racist. If I have the nerve to question that, to challenge that notion, to challenge that program, I'm a bigot. Doesn't matter how much legitimate sentiment I have, no matter how much facts I use, no matter how much truth that I lay out in the way. No. All of that is code. You're a bigot because that was Barack Obama's policy. But we flipped a coin, and suddenly it's perfectly all right to go traipsing around the world trying to undercut President Trump. And that, my friend, is just patriotic resistance. Yeah. Well, in a new phase of that patriotic resistance from the left, I bring you this story. Do you remember just a few months back when former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was being accused by broad swaths of the left of having undermined America's foreign policy? His supposed sin was discussing a United Nations vote regarding Israel with the Russian government after the election and just before the inauguration. This one particular act, we're told, might have violated the dread Logan Act. Now we fast forward just a couple of months. Today, Friday, May the 11th, 2018, the New York Times printed a piece from Stephen Simon, President Obama's former National Security Council's senior director for Middle East and North Africa, and Jonathan Stevenson, a director for political military affairs in the Middle East and North Africa for the Obama National Security Council. Now, that piece that the New York Times printed, it explicitly called on the Europeans to undercut President Trump. It literally says, quote, Europe doesn't have to be Trump's doormat. Now, this follows on former Obama Secretary of State, John Kerry, just gallivanting all around the world, trying to gin up support for the Iran deal. You know, almost the same way he tried to gin up support for the Iran deal before they signed it. That is a clear violation of the Logan Act, by the way. No one has even suggested that Kerry be charged yet. Not anyone in a position of authority that actually could charge him. So it's not really a shock that these two gentlemen would write this piece and that the New York Times would print it. Still, the spectacle of former Obama officials openly appealing to foreign countries to undermine Donald Trump's policy, well, if you separate the hatred and the division, the fact that these people would do this, it's still kind of amazing. I mean, it's on the very verge of treasonous behavior. It's not quite there, but it is. What John Kerry did was clearly a violation of the Logan Act, and what these two have done is probably, arguably, could be charged. Now, that's not going to happen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, we should be on the washout. Now, if we had a more aggressive Justice Department where they actually moved against criminals, especially political criminals, which would be good if they would do, some of these people need to learn that once you become a politician, it still doesn't mean you're above the law. That would be awesome. It's still almost amazing. Anyway, these two, they begin by suggesting that Trump had somehow trampled on European leaders who urged President Trump to exercise restraint in the interest of international security and multilateralism. That's kind of odd since Barack Obama trampled on America's Congress, which did not approve the Iran deal. Therefore, it was not a treaty. He trampled on the American public, which hated every bit of the Iran deal, according to the polls, less than 30%. Less than 30% of the American people had any kind of support for this deal. That means there were a lot of Democrats that didn't like it too. for those of you who can't do the math simply. But politics has its winners, and politics has its losers. And the authors of this little piece, printed in the New York Times, they call on the Europeans to join the resistance. This from the article. Notwithstanding an abundance of Ketvichi, European powers have not yet shown Mr. Trump that he has anything to fear from ignoring their wishes. Since taking office, Mr. Trump has treated Europe like a doormat, questioning the value of NATO, ridiculing the mission of the European Union, and dismissing European exhortations on policy matters. You know, there's a reason why he's done all that, by the way. And I don't deny the charge. He has done a lot of this, but he has done it because he's trying to talk some common sense into a group of political misfits who are leaning further to the left than Justin Trudeau does. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Justin Trudeau, go do your homework. It is a bit of an exaggeration, though. Because, in fact, Europe is not the European Union. There's a lot of countries with actual identities beyond Brussels. Trump has, just as an example, granted a hell of a lot more help to Russian-pressured Ukraine than President Obama ever did. And he's reached out to Eastern European countries that Obama left hanging in order to placate Vladimir Putin. He's pulled out of some meaningless paper arrangements like the Paris Accords, but it's hard to spot just what Trump has done practically to undermine the European position. Now, the authors of this paper, this article, they say that Europe must buck Trump nonetheless. How? Well, you see, these European countries, they should continue to do business with the terrorist regime in Tehran. They must own Trump by siding with the worst freaking people on the planet. Next, they should withdraw their ambassadors from the United States. Remember, these former Obama officials are now calling for foreign countries to withdraw their ambassadors from the United States of America. And furthermore, they want them to expel American ambassadors from their countries, because we're no longer going to funnel cash to the largest state sponsor of terrorism on the planet. This from the article. Isn't this what states do when diplomatic partners breach solemn agreements, expose them to security risk, and threaten to wreak havoc on their economies? That is, after all, what the administration is threatening to do by courting this risk of the Middle Eastern war and applying secondary sanctions on European companies. Depending on the American response, European capitals might even follow up with expulsion of American ambassadors. So, America wants to prevent Iran from gaining a bomb, a viable ICBM-capable carriage nuclear weapon, and to protect its actual Middle Eastern allies from the predilections of Iran's non-nuclear aggression. And Obama's team, the folks that should have shut up and went on to the sunset by now, unless they hitched their star to the next big Democrat that might be coming along. They should not be in a position to make statements at all. They should not be given the format of the New York Times. They should not be squeeching right up to violating the Logan Act. They should be working for the betterment of the American people. But no. Obama's team, the people that he had with him previously, they seem to think that America should be penalized. These former Obama officials go so far, they suggest that Europe should start sanctioning American companies. Yes, they literally said it from the article. If the administration's next move were to impose secondary sanctions on Europe, the Europeans could slap its own penalties on American multinational corporations, which in turn would place additional pressure on the White House. So we penalize companies doing business with, well, one of the most evil regimes on the planet. And Team Obama wants Europe to stop doing business with America. Seems logical, doesn't it? Could we safely call this un-American? If you say no to that, maybe this metaphor is suggesting that America is the new King George III and the EU the new colonies. Maybe that could do it for you. Did that sound un-American? Because they kind of make that case too. This, again, from the article. The Iran case is different. Europe is at odds with the United States on an agreement to which it is a party concerning a matter of wide-ranging strategic and regional importance. If this doesn't end the European Union's doormat foreign policy, we might as well start referring to it as the 28 colonies ruled from across the ocean. This is not an outcome the United States should welcome. As Britain learned in 1939, it is a lot better to have allies than colonies. Now, the Obama team have made their foreign policy preferences clear. If forced to choose between Trump and Iran, they'll choose Iran every time. But don't worry. It's the Trump administration we have to worry about, supposedly. Viva la resistance. Again, the left doesn't get it. They don't understand. Why are we losing? Why are the American people supporting Trump? Why do they seem to not get that we're out here trying to protect them? Because there are these people that honestly believe that the Iran deal was a good thing. I'm guessing they had stake in American Airlines. Not the company, per se, but manufacturers of airplanes. Let me lay this out for you one more time. For those who haven't gotten it, for those who don't get it, for those who are missing it. The Iran deal was not a treaty. It was signed by executive order. So this was a policy preference of the Obama administration, nothing more. Now, any of the European nations that joined this, that did sign, that did ratify, that made it officially a treaty for them, hey, good for them. And if they want to keep doing it, fine. But understand that we're free to put these sanctions in place because we're trying to contain evil. We see, we understand the Iranian regime, the government that controls Iran, not the people of Iran. There's a lot of people there that are actually just victims, but they can't get out. But the government of Iran is evil. They are admittedly trying to bring forth the return of the 12th Imam. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, this is another opportunity for you to go do your homework. There's a lot of folks that claim now over and around that they believe the 12th Imam has returned, and it's just waiting for them to go ahead and get Israel and the United States out of the way. So believe it. Believe it's true, because most likely it is. I have a great deal of concern for the American public who can't quite seem to understand that what Donald Trump did was simply reverse course. He didn't leave a treaty. And not only was it not a treaty, not only could he have never gotten 60 senators to ratify the treaty, which is required by law, he couldn't get American support. The people of this country recognize the fact that if you send these people tons of cash, you send them pallets of cash, and then not have them abiding to any kind of real scrutiny, that best case scenario, you're having to take their word at freezing their nuclear program. Not ending it, not destroying their research, not ending it, just putting it on pause. And to that point, you have people in the American media today and yesterday insinuating that the Iranian attacks on Israel, well, that had to be because of what Donald Trump did. Do not blame Donald Trump or any other American for the actions of the regime in Iran. If they want to get pissy, it's their own freaking fault. If they would actually step up and join the rest of the world and be part of the world instead of trying to follow their asinine doctrine, their theological doctrine, their utter control and adherence to Sharia, a harsh, dark Sharia, if they would step out of that cultism, then they would be free to be part of the world. They could be just as modern. Their economy would be booming, much the way it was before the deposition of the Shah. Iran was a wonderful place before that. For everyone. Women loved it. I've seen pictures. But no, we have media figures who claim to be reporters or claim to be journalists trying to insinuate that Iran's attack on Israel was because of Donald Trump. We have people insinuating that somehow this was a great deal and that Donald Trump's not living up to his oath of office. Nancy Pelosi made the statement that he's failing to live up to his oath of office as he is not protecting the American people. I'm sorry, the oath of office actually is to protect the Constitution and then America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I think he's taking a step towards protecting America from her enemies, not the other way around. Maxine Waters has already said, by doing this, by withdrawing, the only course we have is impeachment. Only she's been saying impeach since right before the inauguration, so it's not really her changing her tune, it's just kind of changing some of the lyrics to the same tune. What's amazing is these people honestly believe that they are going to get some folks to jump. They think some folks are going to bite. They think they're going to hook them, reel them in, get support, and get Trump out. And they have no clue that the American people simply, the majority, a good number, simply recognize Trump's doing a good job. He's even doing a good job with North Korea. Nobody wants to hear that. What? A good job with North Korea? Are you got to be kidding me? Now, I have concerns regarding what's going on with North Korea. And I will touch on that after this brief break. But right now, I'm going to bring you the Edwards Notebook and then the Songs and Stories Tip of the Day. And after all that, we'll pick right up with that, and then we'll get into the next story. So stay with me. I will be right back.
Another leftist judge throws U.S. sovereignty and our Constitution right under the bus. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, U.S. District Activist Judge John D. Bates has ordered the Trump administration to reopen and review applicants who apply for deportation protections under the Defense Action for Childhood Arrivals program. The judge also gave an ultimatum saying that the Department of Homeland Security has 90 days to provide solid reasoning for why the program should be terminated. Forget the fact that former President Obama imposed DACA on the United States to protect more than 800,000 children of illegal immigrant parents who were not authorized to legally be in the United States. The judge also falsely accused Trump of not explaining why he ended DACA. Bradford Berry, general counsel of the NAACP, expressed glee at the judge's decision to rule on behalf of criminals who have strolled into our republic illegally. I find that ironic that a so-called proponent of helping colored people would be happy that a leftist judge ruled on behalf of illegal immigrants who have been systematically helped by American leftists to displace many black Americans regarding economic opportunities, etc. The problem is, Mr. Berry's hatred of America and her sovereignty supersedes his desire to help colored people. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
This is Dan Perkins with your Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us Veterans Tip of the Day. Do you suffer from incontinence, rash, or have open sores due to medication that takes forever to heal? The VA is testing an FDA-approved medical device to treat these serious health issues. The product is called Rash Ends. So here's your Veterans Tip of the Day. Take advantage of this new healing technology. Go to their website, www.rashendz.com, and see if they can help you. If you tell them that you're a vet, you'll get a special price. This has been Dan Perkins with your Veterans Tip of the Day.
Your BB gun was a world of fun when you were just a little squirt. You learned the rules of defensive tools so that no one would get hurt.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am back. Thanks for staying with me through the break. That, of course, was Using Both Hands that we were coming back off the break from. One of the many songs from Mr. Matt Fitzgibbons, a good friend of the show. I want to thank him once again for allowing me permission to use some of his music, and let me take this opportunity to please ask you to slide on over to patriotmusic.com and check out all of his really cool tunes. He's been a good friend of the show. He's been on a few times. If you missed those interviews, please go back into archives and check them out. Matt Fitzgibbons is always an interesting conversation. And we even had one show where we basically just sat back for a while and listened to some of his more recent stuff. But he's constantly working on new projects. patriotmusic.com. Go check it out. I promise you, if you like patriotism, you're going to like it. Most of it... there's not a lot of political slant. It's just patriotic or historical. So, you know, you don't even have to necessarily not like it if you're a liberal. Now, if you're a leftist, you probably hate it because you don't really like American patriotism, but that's being leftist. It's not the same thing as being a liberal. It's really not. Excuse me while I cough. Sorry about that, guys. Now, I did say I would finish up a thought about North Korea that I really haven't gotten to. I've been meaning to make this point for a few episodes now, and I simply haven't gotten to it. So let me say this now. I have a lot of concern about what's going on in North Korea. I do appreciate and I do think that Donald Trump's hardline stance has a lot to do with what's going on here. And I do appreciate the fact that South Korea's president and several South Korea's top officials are all about trying to give credit to Donald Trump. But what I don't like is how President Kim's idea here, suddenly of coming to the table, suddenly looking to be peaceful, comes after he had a meeting in China. I think the Chinese government probably attempted to enlighten President Kim Jong-un, probably tried to give him a little piece of information so he could understand. You see, the current president of South Korea and several of his top government officials are part of a political party that, they're pretty leftist themselves. And one of the major points on the platform that they ran on was getting the United States off the Korean Peninsula. In other words, they want Americans out of South Korea. They want elections, as that's part of their platform. So it's an idea that's gaining more support. So here's what would happen if this continues. They'll sign some kind of peace accord that will go beyond just ending the war. Now, they officially moved towards that. That's great. Hallelujah. Finally, the Korean War is over. But they'll move towards another peace accord that's going to be the stepping stones towards reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Now, North Korea will be more than happy to sign that, as long as a big part of that means an ending of the demilitarized zone and a complete and total exit by American troops in South Korea. Now, at that point, they may actually work together towards making a single Korea, or the North Koreans may simply attack, and before anybody could do anything about it, take over the South the way they had planned all along, back when this division was first created. Ultimately, this still could end up being a bad thing, particularly for the Korean people. Is it time for America to withdraw anyway? Regardless, there's a lot of people that say yes, and I'm not exactly inclined to say that maybe it wouldn't be a good idea. Maybe we should have pulled out of South Korea a long time ago. Maybe there wouldn't be such a resentment for our presence now. But I don't think it's a good idea to make policy based on how other people feel about it. Again, this is how the left works. Our feelings are so important. We should be so concerned about our feelings. Feelings, being overly concerned about feelings, is how you end up with stories about the New Jersey cheerleader. The New Jersey cheerleader who didn't make the squad, and then whose mother ran to the school board and complained and whined and cried, much like you would have expected the cheerleader who didn't make the squad to have done. Only she did it loud enough and she did it long enough that the school board changed its policy, and now everybody gets to participate as a cheerleader. And isn't that awesome? I mean, that's what life's about, right? Everybody getting to participate, having full and total diversity. Isn't that what's great? You don't have to learn that sometimes you work really, really hard and still come up short, thereby trying to influence you to try yet even harder the next go around. No, you don't get to learn that lesson. You don't get to learn the lesson of having to deal with disappointment. Why? Because somebody fixed your disappointment for you. This little girl, I heard the footage, and don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't feel bad for the little girl for not making the team. But the first thing that I thought when I heard this story was, what would have happened if Michael Jordan hadn't been cut as a high school freshman? Would Michael Jordan have become the dominant force in the NBA that he became if he had simply been allowed to participate anyway? No, Michael, don't worry about it. You don't have to get any better at this. If you want to move on, it's not necessary. We'll just put you on this squad over here, and you can participate with other kids at this roughly the same competitive level. It'll be fine. It'll be almost as good as being on the varsity. how many other people in a wide variety of industries and businesses and athletic competitions, how many would have remained mediocre if they hadn't failed at some point, if they hadn't been told, this is what's necessary for you to take the next step. This is what's necessary for you to achieve competitiveness. And if you want to achieve greatness, then you have to go beyond that. This little girl, in her little speak, I practiced really hard. I worked really, really hard. Well, guess what, honey? It still wasn't good enough. Now, hard work should be rewarded, but sometimes you can work as hard as you possibly can, and you're still not going to be successful because other people are just going to be better. Life is full of disappointments. Like any leftist that ends up seeing the title of the show and thinking, oh, well, this should be cool. He's dying anyway. Hopefully he's talking about Donald Trump, and we'll listen and see what things he has to say about that. Yeah, how disappointed were you to hear what I was really saying? Because here's the thing. Every leftist on the planet is going to hear this, and if they know I'm conservative going up front, if they've actually heard of me and heard of the show before, they're going to be like, oh, so he's going to be cracking on McCain. Let's listen and see how savage he is. Maybe we can get some audio bumps that we can use showing how savage and brutal conservatives really are. But instead, all they got was me saying that we should put the partisan politics aside and let him go out however he wants to go out, whether that's being a bitter old dude or not. Didn't I say I wasn't going to mention him anymore? Okay, I'm done with that. It's that same mentality. It's that same idea that takes us to feelings, and letting feelings dictate policy is a bad thing. So the school changed their policy. Should America change its policy on the Korean Peninsula? Now, clearly, I'm not saying that if South Korea declares that they no longer want us there, that we should stay anyway, because we shouldn't. It should be pretty simple and straightforward. But there is a reason, and I would like to think that even with getting Americans off of the peninsula as part of your platform, I would hope after being president of South Korea for a while, you would have had some kind of an awakening, some level of common sense that there is a reason why your predecessors wanted the United States there. It's the only thing that kept North Korea from coming down, wiping your little booties out, and enslaving the rest of the people, and taking what resources you had in order to try and maintain their own cushy style of living. So I don't feel real good about where things are going in South Korea right now. But it's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to play out how it's going to play out. And on the question of whether or not Donald Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, if he actually ends up getting an honest-to-goodness, decent accord out of this, I think you can make a pretty good case. I think that it's only people who are not being particularly objective about it who would still deny it. I mean, who would be a more deserving candidate at this point? It doesn't really matter. It's not like the Nobel Prizes mean as much as they used to anyway. I mean, the minute that you started giving Nobel Prizes to Al Gore and then Barack Obama, before he had a chance to even take office, the things that we expect him to do. Come on. Again, we're back to participation trophies. Well, you won an election. Congratulations, here's the Nobel Peace Prize. And we're supposed to think that's not partisan politics at play. We're supposed to think that that's not just you attempting to push forward a leftist agenda and say, oh, look, he is the anointed one. Barack Hussein Allahu Akbar Obama has single-handedly stopped the rising tides and stopped the melting of the polar ice caps. He saved us from everything that Al Gore told us was going to happen. How awesome. But anyway, that's my primary concern about what's going on in Korea. It is what it is. Take it for what it is. Now, there's some other stuff I want to get to, and I'm going to try to get to as many different topics here as I can real quickly. I think it's kind of important, most of it. Still can't believe what was said about Sarah Palin. But anyway, we're changing directions drastically now. So hang on. I hope you have your seatbelt fastened. It seems that Cecil Richards, she's got a negative idea about people who are pro-life. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I really thought that Cecil Richards I thought she was stepping down from her role as the abortion queen of Planned Parenthood, but evidently that was wrong. In a recent interview with Salon, we know what a great publication Salon is. Leftist propaganda galore. Well, in this interview, Richards issued her most incendiary comments against pro-lifers, maybe of her entire public career. She castigated them with nearly all of the sins labeled in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. Because according to the woman who has personally overseen roughly 3.5 million abortions throughout her tenure as Planned Parenthood CEO, according to her, this great judge of moral character, this obvious theologian, this obvious biblical scholar, this obvious person of faith and impeccable, unquestionable character, according to her, the murderer of 3.5 million babies, or at least directly responsible for the oversight of that murder, she says that pro-life people, they lie, they cheat, they steal. I feel like I'm rooting for Eddie Guerrero. I lie, I cheat, I steal. Eddie Guerrero was actually cool, though. But she claims that pro-lifers lie, they cheat, they steal, they deceive, and they break the law. One of the questions from the interview, it does seem to me that there has been an escalation of these kinds of attacks on nonprofits like Planned Parenthood. What do you think accounts for that? Richard's response, and I quote, "I don't know exactly." Actually, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be quoting. "I don't exactly know what accounts for it. Obviously, there were a couple of groups that specialized in this. I think that one of the things that I see on the right is they are so much more willing to lie, cheat, steal, deceive, and break the law." Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of think that's quite a charge, coming from the woman who lies about the realities of abortion so that she can cheat the American public out of their tax dollars. Some call that deception. Some might even call that theft. Either way, Cecil Richards is looking into a mirror and mistaking her rather hideous reflection for that of her enemies. Worse still, she goes on to claim that she and her cohorts in the progressive community work in harmony with each other and never lie, cheat, steal, deceive, and break the law. This from the interview. She said, "Tactics that, frankly, we don't use in the progressive community." I do think that they have that advantage. The other is they've got a lot of money. People who really probably could care less about the issue, but have complete focus on undermining any progressive institution that has either capacity or political power. She most likely said this before New York Attorney General Snyderman resigned from his position amid allegations of sexual assault. And since we're comparing apples to oranges here anyway, let's not forget the guest of honor at Planned Parenthood's 100th anniversary gala. You may know him as Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, these people certainly, none of the progressives ever engage in such activities. None at all. If you're not angry about stuff like this, then you're not paying attention. Or perhaps you're merely part of the problem. Are you a leftist that thinks such things? Let me give you an example of the lying, the cheating, and the deceiving, and what the folks on the left still don't seem to get. Somehow or another, according to Noam Chomsky, well, the Republican Party is engaged in a unique insanity. I'm quoting now, unique insanity, which is dedicated to destroying organized human life. He made this statement to students at St. Olaf College this past Friday, not today. The comment was more... the comment came more in the context of Dr. Chomsky's 90-minute talk, which was intended to serve as this year's keynote event for the college's Political Awareness Committee. The survival of humanity was the theme throughout the lecture, which opened with a call to the young adults of today, which Chomsky calls the Europe generation. I wonder why. Now, Chomsky himself is, of course, a world-renowned New Left academic who's harshly critical of conservative public policy positions. He asserted that this generation is, quote, facing the most awesome question that has ever arisen in human history. The question is, will organized human life survive? And I suppose we should be concerned about that disorganized human life. Nuclear war, global warming, well, they were just two forces. They were just two forces that were outlined as the primary threats to humanity. But President Donald Trump and the conservative movement in general also came under fire throughout the speech for their stances on these two issues. Chomsky, of course, said that he wasn't surprised with the outcome of the 2016 presidential election, asserting that for well over a century, American elections have been mainly bought, literally, and that he thinks Trump received a huge media support, but added that he is, however, unhappy with the current administration. He thinks Trump got a huge media support? What media exactly is he talking about? Outside of some talk radio and a couple of conservative television shows like Hannity, he really didn't get that much. A lot of it was anti-Trump. Now, Trump declared victory in North Korea. If you want to prance around in public, But please go away and let us move towards peace, disarmament, and unification without disrupting the process. Again, this is a quote from Professor Chomsky. The professor also requested, with regard to the ongoing tensions between the United States and North Korea, just please go away. Problem is, you're winning, Donald, and you're proving to the world that we're a bunch of jokes. We're so close to convincing two back-to-back generations that we are the leaders, that we are the smart ones, that we are the future. We are this close to convincing two back-to-back generations that they should blindly follow us because we care about their feelings. Stop proving us wrong, President Trump, and go away. Now, Chomsky summarized his thoughts by characterizing North Korea as a nation seeking peace. An interesting summation, I must say. They're a nation seeking peace, speculating that Trump will find it hard to threaten military action against a country that is extending an olive branch. Let's see, the thing is, if they're actually extending an olive branch, that's legitimate, if it's not just bogus. In that case, Professor, and I would think you'd be smart enough to know this, maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, maybe I fail to see this in a way that makes sense to you, but there would be no need for military action. If you're actually extending an olive branch and you mean it, if it's legit, there's no need for military action. There's not. You don't go to war with people that are actually trying to be peaceful. We do need to make sure that they are actually really trying to be peaceful. Not just a stall tactic. Not just a way of trying to buy more time. But actually want peace. Now, if they really want peace, if they're really moving in that direction, well, Professor, Trump will not only find it hard to threaten military action, I'm guessing he would find it hard to want to have military action. Because make no mistake, for everything that the media has told you, for everything that every leftist professor has told you as a student, for everything that any Democratic politician, every never-Trumper, no matter what you have been told about Donald Trump, he does not want war. But he does want to make darn sure that you understand fully and completely he's not afraid to take action, and he's not afraid to take decisive action. He will do what's necessary, what he thinks is in the best interest. He wants peace, but we will not, as a nation, be pushed around anymore, not on the national stage and not by any bullies, because Donald Trump knows how to deal with bullies. Now, Chomsky continued, of course, it's not just the current administration. No, that's not all he disdains. So he maintains that Republicans in general are dramatically, not just, but dramatically leading a race to destruction. And this is where it gets real interesting. See, the Republicans are drastically leading a race to destruction as they support the use of fossil fuels. During the 2016 primaries, for instance, Chomsky declared that the entire leadership of the party was saying, let's quickly destroy ourselves, citing candidates like Ohio Governor John Kasich, who supported coal energy, though he contended that it's gotten far more extreme since Trump took office. By now, half of Republican voters deny that global warming is taking place at all. And only 30% of these people think humans may be contributing. Continued to say, I don't think you can find anything like that among any significant part of the population anywhere in the world. And it should tell us something. One thing it should tell us is there's a lot to do for those who hope that maybe organized human life will survive. I don't think we can say enough here. He literally said that half of Republican voters deny global warming is taking place at all. I don't think that there are very many I'm trying to think. I don't recall any, actually. Any of you guys? No, I'm just not there. I can't think of very many, if any. I can't think of any right offhand, actually. Republican voters who don't believe that climate change is occurring. Now, there's a lot of us that don't believe that global warming is taking place, but that's because it's not. Even the global warming scientists, even the bought and paid for climatologists who desperately want to keep money flowing into their pockets, have to tell you that the data says warming has stopped. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason why the people on the left have changed the lexicon. That's why they've changed the words. It's not global warming anymore. It's climate change. Now, there are a lot of Republican voters who understand the facts. And the facts are there is no global warming taking place right now. But there is climate change. I don't know that many Republican voters. I don't know that many people, period, that denies climate change is occurring. But that's because people who understand climate science knows that climate is always changing. And there has not been a drastic change in climate in a, what would be the appropriate word here? In a geological time frame, there's not been a drastic climate change in a relatively short geological time frame. There has been reasonable climate change that occurs naturally on a regular basis. I don't know too many people that say that humans aren't contributing. And you notice that's where it gets tricky. Pay close attention. It is tricky because he's using tricky language. Very tricky language. He's intentionally using tricky language. Because he doesn't say that they're contributing at all. He says that 30% think humans aren't contributing, period. That's a falsehood. There is obvious contribution by humanity. Now, there may be only 30%, maybe even less, that think humanity's contribution is the driving force. And you know what? There's a good reason for that, because most of the real science kind of poo-poos on that idea. You know, to be a science denier, I like falling back on actual scientific reports. I like looking at even the models that show the hardcore data of what is happening, not the projected models that have been wrong time and time and time, and yet time again since the freaking 1960s. No, let's look at the real data that says, oh, guess what? By now, according to Al Gore, the ice cap should have been gone and people should have no idea. All the little children in the world will have never seen a snowstorm. Didn't we have more snow this past year than we've had in decades? Oh, yeah, we did. But somehow that's climate change, too. The polar ice caps were supposed to be melted by now. In fact, for the last 2 years in a row, these ice cutter ships have been trying to make their way to Antarctica so they can measure how much of the Arctic shelf has frozen, has melted away. Only the year before last, the first ship got stuck and had to be rescued because there was more ice than there had been. And this past year, there was a record amount of ice. It was well beyond what it was the previous year. So instead of less ice, instead of global warming melting the ice caps, there was more ice. Yes, more. So, is climate change going on? Yes, of course it is. Are humans contributing in some fashion? Undoubtedly we are. You know, we have that impact on the planet. There's so many of us, and we do lots of really cool and interesting things, and some of it isn't the nicest thing to do to the environment. But the question becomes, is humanity the driving force in climate change? And that would be ridiculously, almost cosmically absurd. This Earth, this planet, this beautiful, beautiful ball of mud and water and air has a lot of systems in place that naturally handle just about everything we can dish out to it. We've barely put a dent. Now, that's not an excuse to go ahead and be crazy. But the other little nasty secret that most leftists will not tell you about most conservatives is we do want to be good stalwarts of this planet. We live here too. We want our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to live here too and to have a happy, healthy, wonderful experience on this world. We do. We're not the cold, heartless creatures that these leftists keep trying to tell you we are. We just want to use facts and logic when it comes to political aspects, political policies, when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars. We don't want the federal government here in the United States to have more power than it's supposed to have in accordance with the Constitution. Because when it gains extra power is when individual liberty is lost. We want you to be free too. We want you to have liberty too. We would love for every other country around the world to establish a constitutionally federated republic like what we have here. Like what was given, the way it was created. We want to return to how this government was created. We want to return to the extremely limited power and scope of federal government, and we want the real power of this nation to be placed firmly back into the hands of the states and the individual sovereign citizens of this nation. But Chomsky, no, he doesn't see it. Republicans are a threat because global warming is a threat. Chomsky, you got a touch, brother. They don't even call it global warming anymore. Now, during the question and answer portion of the event, Chomsky said that, he set his sights on Christianity, at least in response to a question about whether Islamic radicalization is caused primarily by Islamic ideas or U.S. foreign policy. Now, I can tell you that I have studied just enough about Islam that the answer is pretty clear. And like I usually close out the show, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Actually pull out a Quran. Pull out the Hadith. Read the Siri. Read these documents. See who Muhammad really was. See what he really said. And see what the supposed holy teachings really are. Check these out for yourself. It becomes very clear very quickly. What we call here in the States and throughout most of the Western world, what we call radicalization among the Mohammedans, they don't see as being radical. The current leader of Turkey literally told everyone, shut up, you're insulting us when you talk about radicalized Islam. There is no radicalization. There is simply Islam. He was telling you like it was, and nobody wanted to listen. Nobody wanted to hear it. He's a very dangerous man, and through his actions, I really think we're dangerously close to having to just kick Turkey out of NATO. I don't think they belong there anymore based on where the government's at and the fact that most of the people seem to be supporting the idea. But the question was asked, is Islamic radicalization caused primarily by Islamic ideas or U.S. foreign policy? And after rejecting the notion of attributing a specific set of ideas to any one religion, including Islam, proving once again that Chomsky knows nothing about Islam, by the way, he suggested that a better focus would be Christianity, because that's something we can do something about. Say what? No, he said it. Christianity. We should focus on Christianity because that's something we can do something. We can't do anything about Islamic ideology, but we can do something about those pesky Christians. That's what he said. He didn't say it that way. That's what I said. But what he did say is that's something we can do something about. He did say that. That's a quote. It continues saying that people in high places now claim to be devout Christians. And on the basis of Christian ideas, they're saying let's proceed to destroy the world. Now, Chomsky's still asserting that Christian ideas are going to destroy the world. He threw in at the end of that, I don't know anybody in the Islamic world that's doing that. I don't think he knows anybody in the Islamic world, period. That is exactly what Iran is trying to do. Destroy Israel, destroy America, so the 12th Imam will come back and it will be the end of the world. That is how the final cataclysm occurs. That is the Armageddon of the belief in the Islamic land. That is what they are trying to make happen. So guess what? The entire nation... No, not the entire nation. Let me backtrack. The entire regime running Iran is doing far more to try to destroy the world than any Christian anywhere on the planet. This guy makes me so mad. I've got to stop. I'm stopped. I'm stopping. I'm not stopping. I'm changing topics. All right, let's change topics. Let's take another right turn. How about this? Let's move back. Let's move to a different, completely different one. Let's get back to the EPA. The EPA has really been something I've been watching quite a bit here lately because of what's been going on with Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt has found himself in a controversy that has all the looks, all the appearances of impropriety, but it would appear the more we look into things, the more information we find, that it's far less improper than it even appeared, and that when you see the whole truth, it doesn't even really appear improper. See, Democrats have mischaracterized emails between the EPA's top officials and their claim that Scott Pruitt potentially misused taxpayer dollars by trying to create a new agency office in his hometown. And see, that's been the latest bit. Oh, you tried to put an office in your hometown. You're wasting taxpayer dollars. Now, Pruitt did direct his staff to, quote, establish a new EPA office in his own hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, sparking a wave of media coverage that added to the growing list of complaints against Pruitt, and the House Democrats were going ballistic. But, you see, what I just read to you was what the House Democrats were claiming. They were saying Pruitt directed his staff to do this. It's not official. This most recent case of questionable financial management adds to the growing concerns about Administrator Pruitt's misuse of taxpayers' funds and potential ethical lapses in judgment. So says House Democrat Eddie Johnson, representative from Texas. However, according to the Daily Caller News Foundation, they got their hands on and reviewed emails that actually show Pruitt asked the EPA officials to find a place where he could work when he was at home in Oklahoma. Find a place where I can work. This is not open up a brand new office. That's see if you can find an office that would be available, that I can use. Which is what actually happened, by the way. But that's not what the Democrats said. And that's a long way off from being the questionable financial management that the Democrats suggested. EPA officials asked questions about how Pruitt could periodically work from his hometown in Tulsa in a way consistent with past administrators, utilizing existing office setups or working with federal offices to find suitable office space. All of this was clear in the emails. There was no question. There was no open to interpretation. It was clearly laid out. He did not direct anyone. He asked if they could find something nearby so he would have an official office so he could actually work while he was at home. Now, Pruitt, of course, is under fire for allegedly overspending and ethical lapses, which includes flying first class at taxpayers' expense and renting a room from the wife of a D.C. lobbyist. And Congress and the EPA Office of the Inspector General have investigations going on into Pruitt's actions. And they're all up at arms because Pruitt said that the EPA is not going to use any more secret science. I've had like 3 or 4 shows focused on the secret science. See, the House Democrats are claiming that Pruitt wanted to put his own convenience over taxpayers' money by establishing an EPA office in his hometown. The Democrats based their claim on emails from EPA officials, including Chief of Staff Ryan Jackson, who at the time was still working for the Senate Committee on Environmental and Public Works. The Democrats sent letters to the EPA and the General Services Administration demanding documents regarding apparent efforts to create a new EPA office in Pruitt's hometown. The Democrats were also concerned that the EPA officials requested potential office space have, quote, a conference room, secure parking space, and a secured compartmented information facility. See, Democrats cited the recent Government Accountability Office decision that EPA's $43,000 secure phone booth violated federal law. But as you go through the emails, as the Daily Caller News Foundation did, these emails kind of suggest that the Democrats have grossly and intentionally mischaracterized Pruitt's request. See, the Democrats never disclosed how they came across the emails in the first place, nor did they release any of these emails to the public. Because they know that if you read these emails, if you saw these emails for yourself, you would see exactly what they were talking about. That you would know immediately that Pruitt did nothing wrong in this case, nor was the EPA doing anything wrong in an attempt to honor Pruitt's request. Well, it is tragic. But that is where we're at in the world of the body politic right now. There is still more stuff that I would love to get into, but unfortunately, I'm out of time. I've got other things I must attend to. So, thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it. Keep in mind, again, this coming Sunday is Mother's Day here in the United States, and I will have two very special guests. Doug Giles will be joining me, and so will Dr. Lee Bolcom. Be sure to check that out. Hit the archives. Check out a lot of the other shows. I want to thank everybody who listens. Thank you guys. Wherever you're listening at, wherever you find me, thank you very much for being here and being part of the success of Tap Into the Truth. If any of you are so kind and are interested and, like I said, so inclined, please feel free to stop over at Tap Into the Truth. That's TAPP, intothetruth.com. And you'll find a place where you can make a small contribution to help the show going and help continue it growing. If you'd like to do so, I certainly graciously accept any help that you're willing to offer. And in the meanwhile, that's it. That's it for tonight. Remember, though, don't take my word for it. Not on any of the things I've said tonight. Don't take my word for it. Be prepared to put in some effort, put in some time. Be prepared to actually, honest to goodness, do your own research and and use your brain. That's it for me tonight. Thanks for being here. Join me again Sunday. And for the time being, I guess I am out. This next one, I'm going to go out. We'll play the whole song, Eye of the Hurricane. Another Matt Fitzgibbons songs again. Thank you, Matt Fitzgibbons. And check out patriotmusic.com. Check out tapintothetruth.com. Check out the Tap Into the Truth Facebook page, and you'll see links to these and every other news story that I cover here. And that's it. Good night, guys. See you soon.
Smell the dust, feel the sun, fingers twitch just above the gun. Hear the wind cross the plain. There is no fear that I must contain, and I'm in the eye of the hurricane. I see the sweat across his brow. I'm poised to draw in eternal now. The fastest one is the one who's slain. I still stand, got the better aim. And I'm in the eye of the hurricane. And I want the world to know my pain. And I want the wind to say my name. I'm in the eye of the hurricane. Passing through on my way back home to get a drink but be left alone. They tried to take my guns, it's the mayor's new campaign. I told them I would leave, they pushed me just the same. And I'm in the eye of the hurricane.